Yeah, I'm just out here baking in the sun because carnivores, they don't burn. When you get rid of all that toxic stuff out of your diet, the sun just doesn't affect your skin in the same way. So I can pretty much be in the sun as much as I want, and I don't have to worry about burning anymore, even if I'm pale as a ghost. Now, obviously I'm not pale as a ghost, but that's also because I'm in the sun all the time. I'm getting my daily dose of vitamin D, and that's benefit, 287 out of 1,000. So out of the 1,000 benefits that I've had since going carnivore, this is probably up near the top of the list, I will tell you that. So I just wanted to dispel this myth, because I see a lot more of these outlandish claims being made about carnivore, and I'm not knocking the effects of carnivore, the positive effects of carnivore, because I've been carnivore for a long time now, and it has had nothing but profound benefits on my health, and I will probably never go back to eating any other way ever again, because it literally saved my life. But there's a lot of people out there that you'll hear say that you can't burn on carnivore. And as you can see, I am very dark. My ethnicity, my racial background comes from Cherokee Indian. Where I live right here is Indian country. I've got arrowheads all over the place. I actually have ancestors that are buried in my backyard because I have a cemetery behind my house. And even though I'm that dark, and even though these people that lived here before us were out in the sun all the time, and my ancestors are used to being out in the sun, I'm used to being out in the sun, and I am out in the sun a lot, probably more than the average person, I still burn. Even after all that, I'm not Irish, I'm not, English or whatever, I still burn. Even having that kind of cultural background, we'll say. So the notion and the idea that you can't burn just because you're on carnivore is 100% false. You can still burn. And even the people making these claims, if they're out in the sun enough, they're still going to burn, especially if you've been cooped up all winter and then all of a sudden you're suddenly introducing yourself to the sun. You're going to burn at least a few times a year. And that's the case for me. Like throughout the winter, I'm cooped up in the house. I go outside, yes, but it's cold outside. I have clothes on. So my first time out, fishing or being out on the lake or whatever I'm doing, without a shirt on, I typically burn, even if I'm not in the sun that much. So it's definitely still possible. And you'll hear a lot of people claim that humans don't have fur. So that's the reason why you have to put sunscreen on. But I would argue against that and say that we don't have fur, but we do have a brain. And it's a very sophisticated brain. And we also have opposing thumbs, which means that we've created clothing. And we're smart enough to move out of the sun when we've had enough. Every other species of animals on the planet will move out of the sun when they've had enough. We're the only species that I guess we think we're above doing that, and instead of moving out of the sun or putting clothing on and covering ourselves up because we don't have fur or we don't have anything to cover our skin, we have to lather and slather toxic sunscreens all over our bodies. And there's a big argument that says sunscreens are not toxic. And one of the chemicals you'll hear thrown around a lot is oxybenzone, which is one of the big chemicals that was linked to cancer and is supposed to be very, very toxic. So a lot of the sunscreens now don't have that. But they'll have other things like disodium EDTA, which has been banned in numerous other countries because it is so toxic, and it can lead to renal failure and cardiac arrest and extremely low blood pressure and all these horrible things that can literally kill you if you have too much of this in your body. And again, countries like Europe and Australia have banned this substance, but we allow it in sunscreens here in the US. And people use these sunscreens because they're told that they are non-toxic, because they're told that instead of going in the shade and covering up, which is the best thing you could do, they push sunscreens instead. And I'm sure most of you know this, but our skin is our biggest organ. We not only detox through our skin, but we also absorb pretty much everything that comes in contact with our skin. And if it's a toxic substance, it's going into our body, it's going into our bloodstream, and it's going to affect us negatively. Even if there's studies saying that these chemicals and these toxins aren't toxic, it's going to affect us somehow. And when you're putting this on your body, you know, for 3 or 4, 5 months out of the year, it's probably going to build up over time, and it's probably going to have negative effects on your health. So the notion that you can't burn because you're on carnivore is not a fact. You can burn. Do you become more resilient to the sun? 100%. Most people do. I've noticed that with myself. I don't burn as easily. And I think a lot of that, what it comes down to, is that you don't have these inflammatory things going in your body. So with your body being in a lower inflammatory state, because you're consuming foods that are actually nourishing your body and not poisoning you essentially, then your chances of burning is going to be much less. Another thing that helps is if you don't wear sunglasses, because when you don't wear sunglasses and the sun actually makes it into your eyes, your body has very sophisticated processes that recognize that, and it automatically signals your body to protect your skin. These are very real things that happen. And other very real things that happen is that when you don't wear sunglasses and you're in the sun and you're not inflamed, is that you synthesize vitamin D better, which means that you're going to be healthier, because vitamin D is tied to a ton of very important processes in the body. It's tied to your immune function. It's tied to hormone health. It's tied to a lot of things that are really going to benefit you in the long term. So getting sun is very, very important, but I think the key takeaway here is that it's important to realize that you're not invincible. And the sun can 100% still harm you. It could still damage your skin. And just because you don't burn as easily does not mean you can't burn, and does not mean there aren't still risks involved in being out in the sun too much. So the most important thing we can do is cover up. All you need to synthesize vitamin D and get the benefits from that is about 15 to 30 minutes of sunlight every single day. If you can do that, or as often as possible, that's all you need. You don't need to bake in the sun for hours at a time. And if for some reason you can't limit your time in the sun, which is going to happen, the better alternative to toxic sunscreens is going to be covering up. Wearing light-colored, lightweight clothing that's not made out of polyester, something that's cotton, breathable, wearing that and covering your skin. So the main thing I want people to take away from this is that I don't want you to think that just because people are making these claims that you can't burn on carnivore, if you go carnivore, that it's an excuse to just be out in the sun as much as you want and there's going to be no consequences. Because there are still risks. And even animals in the wild understand those risks, and when they've had too much sun, they seek shelter. Now, with that said, it's pretty freaking hot out here, and I've been in the sun at least 15-20 minutes, so I, like the animals, am going to seek shade.